we'll be starting with today's session. So first question is like what is free and open source software? Okay, so this is known as FOSS. So free software basically means that it can be publicly distributed and is free to use, and free here doesn't mean just price wise. It also means that the users have their own freedom in the sense that how they can use it, and most of the times they are usually open source. So open source means that the source code of the software is publicly available. Basically, people share it on websites like say GitLabs or GitHub. And the advantage of this is that open source softwares usually have lesser number of bugs because there are because anybody can contribute to removing the bugs in them and removing the vulnerabilities in them. So basically, Linux is one open source operating system in which a lots of people have contributed, and therefore it's very stable operating system. So disadvantage of this is that since the source code is freely available, people can also find vulnerabilities and try to exploit them. But that generally doesn't happen because most of the time people usually help in developing it further and removing the vulnerabilities. Now, what is Linux? So basically, Linux is a kernel. Kernel is the core of a software. Okay, it was developed by Linus Torvalds, and it is Linux, the operating system that we use is known as GNU Linux. GNU. This is pronounced as GNU. And GNU Linux is to emphasize the importance of GNU software. So Torvalds just built the kernel of the operating system. He didn't introduce any programs to it or say compilers or other software. It was this GNU that helped Linux develop by installing say a C compiler, C++ compilers and stuff like that. So that is why in the open source, the Free Software Foundation uses the name GNU Linux instead of just Linux. And now let's talk about the advantages of using Linux. So basically, since Linux is open source, there are lesser number of vulnerabilities as compared to a closed source operating system like Windows or Mac. And also, like when you apply for jobs, then like if you know Linux, then it usually adds to your resume and it helps you over there also. And Linux is very good for programmers because working the workflow in the Linux operating system is like better than say Windows. Okay, because most of the things are pre-installed and they help us in while programming. So now we'll be starting with basic file system navigation commands. So I'll be using my terminal screen. Okay, so I hope that this terminal screen is visible. Now, what ls command usually does is that it tells the number of directories. It lists down all the directories that are directories and files that are available in my current directory where I am. So what does a directory mean? It is basically a folder. So right now I am in my home folder, and in this folder I have these many directories available. Okay, so now I'll just create a sample directory for today's session. Okay, so right now I'll explain the ls command. There are some options that we can use with the ls command. For example, ls-l. So what this does it linearly displays all the directories, and the advantage is that it is more organized, and we also get to know the permissions and the users and the groups and the timestamps and date etc. for every directory or file. So this is the advantage of using this dash l option, and there's another option that we can use, that is dash ls-al. So this usually helps in showing us the hidden files. So hidden files and directories are basically the ones which have dot in their in the beginning of their names. So these are usually hidden because they are usually used by system and not by the users like us. So this is our ls command. Ls stands for list, by the way. So I'll be going to my sample directory. Okay, so this is cd. So cd means change directory. Okay, so now suppose I go back and I am in my home directory. Okay, now suppose I want to go to say sample directory. What I have to do is I have to write cd and write the name sample. So what I'm telling the terminal is that I want to change my directory to sample, and when I press enter, I come to the sample directory. You can see now my file. I came from this directory to this directory. So this is basically the cd command, and there are other options with cd. For example, if I say cd dot dot, then I simply go to the previous directory in the hierarchy, which is this directory right now. So, and what you can also do is, suppose I want to go from one directory to say some other directory in some other part of the system. For example, if I want to go to some root folder, then I can just type the complete address, and I can go there. But currently I don't have the permission to go to the root because I'm not a super user right now. So basically I can go to bin. So if I show you the directory, so I came to this directory, and there is another option. Suppose I want to go back to the directory from where I came. This is basically to go back to the directory that is in the hierarchy. But because first previously I was working in this sample directory, and so I mean the home directory, and now if I want to go back to the home directory, I can use this option cd hyphen, and I come back to my home directory. So these are basically the options with cd. And now for this session I'll just go back to my sample directory for further for the rest of the session. Okay, so now we'll go to the next command, and this is the clear command. So clear command basically helps us in cleaning our terminal. So suppose like you can see, as there are a lot of commands, and if I want to clean terminal screen, I can just type clear and my whole terminal screen gets cleared. And suppose you want to see the command that you had previously entered, you can just type history, and you can see all the commands that I previously typed. Okay, so I'll clear the screen again and we'll carry forward. And then this is the touch command. So touch command basically has two purposes. First, if you want to make an empty file without opening it in a text editor, and suppose you want to modify the timestamps of a file. Okay, so for example, if I make touch hello world dot c and I use the list command, you can see that a file by this name has been created, and this is an empty file. I created it without opening a text editor, right? So this is the use of the touch command. And now let me create one more file. And okay, so now let me just list all the stuff. So this is the timestamps. Okay, 1622, 1622, and 1621. Now what happens if I press touch again? Touch for hello world.c again. And now let me list again. So as you can see, the timestamp of the file got changed. So basically I changed the timestamp without opening the file or doing anything else to the file. So these are the primary uses of touch command. And now we'll go forward. So now this pwd command stands for present working directory or print working directory. And basically when I type it, I just get the address of my directory that I'm currently in. So this stands for root, then home, then my home folder, and this is the sample. This is the folder that I'm currently in. And this is an environment variable. So in Linux, many a times you'll be using scripting in Linux. Okay, so scripts are basically things that you run to automate your system. So for that, if you want the use of if you want to if you want to tell the system the current name of the present working directory, you can just write a dollar symbol and pwd, which is a this is actually a variable, system variable, and dollar means the value. So you can use it to basically tell the Linux to use this in your scripts. So this is one use of pwd. Okay, now we have the cat command. Uh, okay, so what does cat command stand for? A cat basically means concatenate. Now suppose I create a, let's say, let me make some files. Let me just, okay, so suppose now hello world.c. Okay, let's take hello world.c. Cat is usually used to view the contents of the file. Okay, now so what happens if I write cat hello C? Okay, nothing happens. Let me make a Python file quickly because it's easy to code in. So touch. Okay, so now this is the Python file that I created, and let me view the contents. So okay, so as you can see it's empty, and let me write something in the file. So suppose I write and let me save it. Now what if I want to see the contents of the current.py file without opening a text editor? I just want to see directly from the terminal. I can simply write cat current.py. Okay, and you can see the contents. Let me make one more file uh, and we'll do some more. I'll show you more functionality of the cat command. So let's write print second file. Now if I print out the contents of the second file, I get the contents. Okay, so cat command, what I told was, is used to view the contents. Okay, and now suppose cat, there are other uses of cat command also. Now suppose I want to append this file to the end of this file. So what I basically want to do is, like, I want to append all the contents of this file to the end of this thing. Then I can basically write cat dot py double this thing and then write the file name. Okay, now what happens if I print the contents of current.py? So I get these two things, right? So basically the contents of this file were print hello, after I and the contents of this file was print second file, and when I use cat current2.py, and basically what it's doing is it's appending the contents of the second file to the first file. So this is one utility of cat file. And also one more thing you can do is, suppose you want to directly add stuff to the files from the terminal, you can simply write this thing. And now when I enter this command, it tells me to write stuff. And suppose let's write and suppose I want to terminate my writing, like suppose I've written all my contents and now I want to terminate, I can simply write Control plus C, and basically now let me print the contents of current.py. So as you can see, I basically wrote these two lines directly from the terminal. Okay, so this is basically how the cat command works. So it has many functionalities, basically used for appending stuff to the file and displaying stuff from the file. So this was your cat file, and okay, now we move to the next command. Okay, now this is move mv. Mv stands for move. It is used for two things. The first purpose is as it is very trivial, the purpose of the file of this command is to move one file from another from one location to another. And the second use of this command is to rename a file or a folder. Okay, now we don't have a rename command in Linux natively, but we can use mv command to basically change the name. Now I will show you how it works. So if I print out the display the files that are currently in my this direct sample directory, I have 5 files, hello2, hello3, and so on. Let me go back to my home folder and create another folder. Okay, so I'll make one folder, say sample2. Now, so you can see now I have 2 folders in my home directory, sample and sample2. Okay, now let me go to the sample2 directory and let me print out the contents. So totally sample2 is completely empty, right? Now let me move some files from sample to sample2. Let me go back to my sample directory first. Okay, now I am in my sample directory. So the files available here are hello2, hello3, etc. Let me move hello3 file from okay, no, let me move this current file from sample to sample2. Okay, now what I have to write is move, then the name of the source file, and then the destination. Okay, so the destination of that file is, if I write the entire destination, it is root, then home, then Karan, and then sample 2. Okay, now if I again use the ls command, you can see that this file is not present in my current folder right now because I moved it basically to sample 2. If I go back to the sample 2 folder and I print out the contents, so now I have this file. So this is how the move command works. Okay, and the other use of this I told is to rename the file or folder. Okay, let me go back to sample2 and change the name of a file. I'll just okay, so let me rename this hello3.c to world.c. Okay, so what I will do is I'll write move hello 3.c and I'll write the source. We have to write the source file here and then the destination, right? So destination I'll write world.c and I'll press enter, and again I'll use the listing command. I'll just list the stuff. So now you can see I have a file by the name world.c and I don't have hello3.c. Okay, so what move command does is, if the destination file doesn't exist, it will be created and the source file will be deleted. It will basically overwrite on the created file. If the destination, like if we don't mention the file name, like here in this case, I didn't specify any file name, right? I just specified a path. So basically what I did is I just moved this source file, erased it from this directory and moved it to this location. So this is how the move command works. Okay, now I clear my terminal screen. We'll move to the next command. Okay, so this is CP. CP stands for copying. So copy, it's similar like moving. You basically create a copy of a file. So if I have a file, say hello2.world.c. Okay, now let me copy this file to my sample folder. And let me just write. Okay, let me yeah. So CP C2 sample. And now let me go back to the sample folder. Okay, so I first go back to my home directory. You can see this is my home directory, and now let me go to the sample2 folder. Let me list. So now, okay, one second. Okay, now you can see this is the file world.c. So basically it moved from sample to sample2 to sample2. If I go back to sample2, I won't be seeing this world.c anymore. Let me go back. Uh, Yeah, so if I list all the contents, so as you can see, okay, sorry, yeah, we'll be seeing because this is a copy, right? So basically what I did is I copied the world.c file from sample, and now I have like to the sample2 folder. Like let me just show you the contents of world.c. Yeah, so basically that was empty, right? I'll quickly write something. Okay, so this current2 has this content, right? Let me copy this file and move it to sample2 again. Okay, now I have this file current2.py because I copied it from sample folder. Let me print out the contents of current2.py. So as you can see, the contents are the same. So basically I copied it from the sample folder to the sample2 folder. Now we'll move to the next command. Okay, so these commands are a bit like you have to be careful with these commands because these are usually used for deleting files or deleting repositories. Okay, I mean directories. So I'll quickly show you how to use these commands. Okay, now currently I have these things in my current folder, these files. Now rm command is used to delete files. So let me just make some temporary files for so that we can delete them. Now let me just list out the contents of our folder. So as you can see, I just created three files using a touch command, temp1, 2 and 3. And now let me show you how to remove this file. So in order to, and I'll also create one sample directory. Okay. So these are basically the contents of my file folder right now. The sample folder has atom, a folder. Now this D stands for a directory. So this information helps the a slash means it's a file and a D means it's a directory. So these things help us with the permission and stuff. So this is extra information that we get from using the lsl command. And now let me delete temp 1, 2 and 3 files. Okay, so what I have to do is I have to just use the rm command, write the names of the file, and press enter. Now if I list the files using the ls-l, I will see that temp files won't be there. Like see, now I can't find any of the temp files, right? So that is basically because rm deleted them. Now what if I want to delete this atom folder? If I type rm atom, I'll get an error saying that atom can't be deleted because it's a directory. Okay, so how do we delete a directory? For deleting a directory, we use this command rmdir. And now if I list the content, you can see that atom folder is missing now. We have hello2, hello world, etc. Okay, now, okay, so now let me create that atom folder again and we'll do some stuff with that atom folder. So, by the way, mkdir is a command that is used to make a directory. So by this, I just made an atom folder, and if I list the contents, I have this atom folder now. Let me go to the atom folder and create some files. You for creating a file, will just simply write touch temp1, temp2, and temp.py. Okay. So if I list the content, okay, so this is our atom folder. You can see if I use pwd, I get this address, and this is the atom folder. And now let me just print out the contents. So these are our contents. We have these three files. Let me go back to the sample folder, and let me now try deleting atom. So what happens? So let me try deleting this atom folder. So what happens if I use the mkdir command, rmdir command? Okay, so I get an error saying that atom is a directory which is not empty. So we can't use rmdir to delete a folder that has contents in it. So how do we delete a folder with contents inside it? So for that we use this command. I mean not the command, we use this option rm-r. What does R mean? R basically means that we have to delete stuff recursively. So what it is going to do is it's going to go inside the atom folder, and suppose it has another folder in it, it's going to go in again into that folder, it's going to delete everything in that folder, come back, then delete all the stuff in the atom folder, and then come back and then delete the folder. Okay, so I'm going to press enter, and let's see what happens now when I list all the contents. So now my atom folder is missing. Okay, now one more thing we'll do is we'll quickly create those files again. So now I created my atom with all the files. Okay, like I'll just clear the terminal and I'll list down all the contents. So as you can see in the atom folder, I have temp12 and this temp.py. Now let me go back to the previous folder and let me show you this option IR. So I basically means that it's going to confirm whether you want to delete something or not. Okay, whenever the rm command is going to delete any file or directory, I will always allow or to ask you that it will basically ask every time you are about to delete a file, and this is useful when you have to delete an entire folder, but you have to look through if you want to delete each and every file or not. So if I press enter, okay, I'll get an error because I'm not using the R option, because we need to use that recursive option. Now if I do this, so it's first going to ask me, should I descend into the directory atom? Now in order to say yes, I simply type y, press enter. Now it's going to ask me, should we remove the file atom.temp.py? I have to type y if I want to do it. Should I say delete temp2.c? Yes. And suppose you don't want to delete temp1.c, simply enter no. And now it's asking me, should I remove the directory atom? Now, if I type Y, it won't delete because I already have said no for this folder, right? So basically it will delete this file, but it won't delete this file. So what happens if I press yes? I'll get an error. Okay, so let me go to the atom file and see out the contents. So this is the only file remaining because for this I pressed no. Now if I delete this, if I come back and I repeat my command, rmir atom, so it's again going to ask me whether to go into atom or not. I'll press yes. Then it's going to ask me whether I should delete this file. I'll press yes, and then whether we want to delete the directory, we want to delete it. Yes, okay. So let me list out the contents. So I don't have the atom folder anymore with me. So this is how rm and rmdir work. Yeah, so F option is basically used for forcing it stands for forcing, and it basically means that it's not going to ask the user whether you want to delete it or not. So basically it helps when there are special files, you cannot just simply delete them. The system will always ask you, but if you don't want to answer and just say yes for everything, then F option is used. Now in many memes on the internet, you'll see that people saying that this command is very useful. I mean, like, they'll just tell you to use this command in your system. Now this basically what it means is it's a very dangerous command. It means that remove recursively and forcibly remove the root folder. This is the root folder. So basically what it's going to do is it's going to wipe your entire hard disk. So it's very dangerous command, and Yeah, I mean, like, I just wanted to educate you regarding this. That don't, this is like you have to be careful with RM and RMDIR. Okay, this like especially with RM because it completely deletes stuff, and this slash it means root, and so root means like root is basically a folder where everything in your Linux is stored. So it's basically going to wipe your entire drive. Okay, so this is a dangerous command. It's usually used with the super user privilege. You can't directly type it without the sudo permissions, and it's dangerous. Okay, so just I just wanted to tell you this. So okay, so does anybody have any doubts?
Yeah, I do have a doubt regarding that.
Yeah.
The RM minus F and the normal RM, what is the difference between them? Because RM, and then if I type a file name, it's not gonna ask me before deleting that file name.
Yes. Okay.
And
I'll
what does RM minus F do? Then if it is the same function, then what is it used for?
Yeah, so basically what happens is many people there's this thing called alias in Linux, okay?
Yeah,
So suppose there's a command, say I want to go to cd, like suppose there's a command like there's a long command, okay, like
yeah.
sudo su.
Hmm.
This is basically used to become the root.
Super user, right?
Yeah.
User, yeah.
Okay, now what happens is like suppose people want to they can do in Linux you can set up aliases. What alias does is that it
Alternative
basically
names.
yeah gives alternative names to your commands. Okay,
Yeah.
so basically I can say make a command like super which
As
means that sudo su. Okay,
hmm.
I'll exit first and then I'll okay. So what some people do is they set an alias for RMI as RM.
RMI as RM, because
Yeah, so it
RMI told it prompts you to ask, it prompts you whether you need to delete it or not, right?
yeah, so basically it's a safer option, right? Instead of
Yeah,
deleting
it
it.
is a safer option, but usually in our thing, it's not prompted, it's not set that way, right?
Yeah, it usually doesn't, and therefore we use many people set this as their alias for RM, and then basically whenever they use RM, so they'll be prompted. And so that's why in order if there's a situation where you want to avoid that, you basically use the RMF option.
Okay, so the
Also,
RM is basically a alias for one of these three functions.
no, RM is not an alias. RM is a command. They can use RM as an alias for RMI.
Okay, look, you're using RM as an alias for you can set RM as an alias for RMI, right?
Yeah, yeah, yeah. That's
But then wouldn't the original function of RM be lost when you set it as an alias?
yes, but basically RM is used for deleting files, right?
Yeah, RM is used for deleting files.
Yeah, so an RMI is just adding extra functionality. Yeah, the original. So basically, then whenever I type RM, I'll always be having the RM dash I option by default.
No, but what I wanted to know was the RM function and RM minus F. RM minus F, it will cohesively removes it without prompting anything, right?
Yeah, yeah,
That's
yeah.
basically what RM function does,
Yeah,
and it
no.
is not
So
aliased, right?
in case in yeah, it is not usually an alias, but in case people set it as an alias, then you can add the dash f to not prompt stuff. Also, when you okay, so when you remember right when I used the RMI, it was asking me delete normal file current.py.
Yeah, yeah,
Basically, in a Linux system, there are not just normal files, there are some special files also. Okay,
yeah.
so in case for them I don't use dash I command, I simply remove them. Even then the system is going to prompt me to answer whether because they are critical files. Okay, you can't just simply delete them.
Okay, so it based on the file, it prompts, it
Yeah, it can
changes.
prompt because those are system critical files. So for in order to avoid getting prompted with those files, you simply use dash f.
Okay, for those files.
Yeah, so that is why dash f is a dangerous option because it's never going to prompt you, irrespective of how critical that file is.
And what does RM minus RF do? It clears out the whole drive.
No, rm-rf basically clears out a directory that we specify. But if you write dash, if we just write dash, I mean
It
this
clears out
slash,
the root.
yeah, so it clears out the root. So the root is basically the entire stuff, like it, the folder where everything in the Linux system lies.
Yeah, yeah. And it doesn't
So
prompt anything for this.
yeah,
It's the
because of
forceful
the
delete.
because of the forceful option, it's not going to prompt you. It's simply going to delete.
Okay, okay, I understood. Thanks.
Yeah, yeah, not an issue. So anybody else having any doubt?
So one moment, Karan. So
Uh,
Jatin,
the-
to add on to what Karan said, basically sometimes you can have something called a symbolic link. So what that means is although a file or something is pointing to something, it would always not be pointed in that specific location. So I could keep it either like a shortcut or it could be some system file. So in those cases, that is when you need the F. It basically depends on whether you are the owner of the file or the operating system is the owner of the file or something else. So there's a command called chown, which we're not going to talk in this session, probably in a future session. But if you don't have permission or you don't have direct write access to a file, that is when you need the F flag to provide additional confirmation. So that's another case where the F flag is used. The R flag is just a recursive flag. So that's the thing.
yeah, okay, understood.
And anybody else, if you guys have doubt, you can ask. Okay, then I'll just move forward with the contents. Yeah, so now we begin with task management in Linux. So in Windows, everybody has task managers, right? You must have used them when your programs get stuck or something like that. So similarly, in order to do the same stuff, we need to use command line utilities, and we'll be discussing them in this section. So our first command is the top command. Okay, what happens when I write the top command? Like when I enter the top command, I basically get a list of all the operations. I mean, all the processes that are happening in my Linux machine. Now this is the process ID, this is the user. Now we have two users right now, that is me and a root. So root, basically you can also be a root, but like most of the system processes that the operating system wants to do are done by the root user. Okay, so it doesn't mean that a person is doing it, it means that the system itself is doing it and it has root privileges. And this is command. Command means the name of the process. Okay, like teams, xor, etc. Now this so basically I can't click on anything in this utility and I cannot navigate also. So in order to make the top command more interactive for the users, we have come up with htop. This is a color coded and more like this is superior to the top command, and this has more details like the entire name of the command, CPU percentage user, memory percentage user, person ID user, and there are other options also. Now before I go further, I would like to tell you that htop is not installed in your system by default. You need to install it. In case any of you are doing it right now, like they are they're going to try htop, you need to do what you need to do is sudo htop, sorry, sudo apt install htop. Okay, now basically since it's installed in my computer, it's not going to upgrade or install anything else. But since you don't have it in your system, you will be prompted to press yes to y to install it. Okay, so just type y and it will tell you how much memory, how much storage it's going to use, and just press y and it will be installed in no time. Okay, so this is the htop command. Now I'll show you how to use it. Simply type htop and you get a list of all the processes that are running in your system. So now suppose I want to search for a process. I simply need to type F3, and when you press, okay, by mistake I pressed F2, one second. Yeah, so if you need to search for a process, then just type F3 and you'll be prompted to search. So let me search for a process. Now I'm not very familiar with all the processes, so I'll simply search for the htop process. And now it's going to highlight my htop process. Okay, now in order to kill this, I have utility to do it, like I have the kill utility directly from this htop thing. So basically I need to press F9 and enter the, and because it is selected, right, so I just need to press F9 and it will get terminated. One sec. Yeah, no, first we have to select the signal. So sig term is a signal that is used to kill. And there are other signals also which we won't be covering in this session. But just remember that sig term means that we'll be sending a signal to the process that is running, the stop process, that we want to terminate it. Now when I press enter, it will get terminated. So basically I came back to my screen, right? Now I'll show you another way to kill a process. Okay, now another way to kill a process is by using a kill command and entering the process ID. So let's do this. Let me type htop. Let me search for ftop again, a process, and so now the process ID of htop is 25259. Okay, now let me open another terminal window and write kill 25259. Now when I press enter, it's going to kill the htop process. So basically, in order to get the process ID, you simply use the top command, and htop is basically a special utility that htop is basically a special utility, a more superior version of htop. So it makes it easier for you to kill stuff and like basically for task management. And in order to see all the signals that are available, you can just press this thing kill with the option L, and you'll basically get a list of all the signals. But we won't be covering this. We'll be the only signal we work with is sig term, which sends a terminating signal to the process. So this is a top command, this is your htop command, and this is our kill command. Now Avinash will be covering the remaining topics.
All right. So, folks, now we will look into some miscellaneous topics related to Linux. Desktop environment. So, what exactly is a desktop environment? So, interacting with the Linux can be done completely through a shell, but mostly we need a graphical user interface to work better, to multitask and others. So this graphical user interface contains icons, themes, designs, and set of applications that gets installed as soon as we install this desktop environment. We have a lot of options to choose from, such as Genome, KDE, Mate, XFCE. So the difference between all these are according to our requirements. Like if we need one of those desktop environments which need to be run very smoothly, we'll go for Genome, or anything something else that uses very less memory, so we'll go for XFCE. So according to our requirements, we can choose whatever we want. So below given are some of the commands to install these. For Ubuntu desktop, we use sudo apt install Ubuntu desktop. And even if you don't like any desktop environment much, with a bit of a knowledge and experience, you can edit your GUI and tweak it according to your needs. So there are a lot of themes also available on the internet, such as the gelomelook.com, which you can install, include icons, or include any special themes. So I'm gonna show you a file. So I'll shift to my home screen. Okay, so now you can see my home screen. So this exactly is a modified version of Ubuntu. I've added a theme and I've tweaked it a little bit using this file. So this exactly is a CSS file known as the genome shell.css. So mostly, I think you have heard of CSS files. It is mostly used in web development for modifying the web page for better graphical interface and more to be more stylish. Here also for Ubuntu and other Linux desktop environments, they use a CSS file to allocate the size or positions of any of these icons that I'm showing. So if we need to change these, like the color of these or the shadow or the opacity, we can edit this genome shell.css file and tweak it accordingly. So here we have separate directions for any active buttons or insensitive buttons. Like we have a lot of options here. And apart from that, I also have, okay, so this is a .-rc file. Okay, so what exactly it is? Every time we load a terminal, a file gets activated. The work of this file is to load all the tools and build everything and get everything ready so that we can use the terminal. So the name of this file is .-rc. So anything like we want to tweak it accordingly, like if this is my terminal screen, so I've made it according, like every time I open a new terminal I can see this logo. So this can be done by editing and executing some commands in the .bashrc file. I'll show you at the top. Okay, so there is a simple pattern printed using the bash script. These things will be taught to you later sessions. So, and apart from that, as Karan said before, we have aliases. Aliases are like a set of a particular command that I'm making for particular executing any other command. So if I want to run this file init.sh file, I have set it as, this is the command to set it as the alias, and the name of the alias is iamroot. So whenever I'll be typing iamroot, this file will get executed. And some other things that I want to show is an upload function. Aliases can be used for using like a single command, but more than that, if you want to use a set of different commands, we can use functions in shell scripting. So these functions are used, like I have a lot of commands here to execute. I pack them into a function, and whenever I use this function, these all these commands gets executed. All right, so let's go back. Windows subsystem. Windows subsystem for Linux, there's an alternative for virtual machines, and this has been become pretty famous in recent years, mainly because of the major changes that were brought to the latest version in Windows. So WSL allows us to run the Linux libraries while staying in Windows. You can interact with the terminal almost as similar to that when you are in Linux. So in the recent version of WSL, you can even set up a GUI in WSL. So later on, I'll be showing the steps to install WSL in your system. Virtual machines. So a virtual machine is a software that runs another OS on the main OS. These are very useful while working on different operating systems parallelly. So there are two ways to run a virtual machine. One is the pretty standard way where we create a virtual disk and then we install the operating system manually into that. That takes a bit of a time, but and another way is that we can there are pre-installed virtual disks available on the internet, so we can download those disks and use it as it is. Like we don't need to install anything, we can directly connect it to the virtual machine and it will run the OS. Right. So I think you guys have heard about Linus Torvalds. Uh, he is the one who made the Linux kernel. So here's a funny quote from him. When you say I wrote a program that crashed Windows, people just stare at you blankly and say, hey, I got these with the system for free. So what exactly he means is that Windows has a lot of problems of getting crashed frequently due to some problems or any programs. To install WSL, I have this link, so we can go to that link. So for those who have not installed Linux, you can go to the website and you can install it accordingly. So first you need to activate the Windows subsystem in the applications tab, and after activating, it's pretty easy. After this activation is done, it's pretty easy. You just have to go to Microsoft Store and then install Ubuntu.